Okay, we've got Tammy here. Tammy, welcome to my safe space, Global Voices.
Hi, thanks for having me on tonight.
I am so incredibly honored and excited. Tammy and I have only just had a few moments to kind of connect with each other here. So I, like all of you, I'm actually super curious. Tammy, please tell us more about like who you are, where you are from, and what you do.
I am Tammy Adcock, and I am the founder and coach of Adcock Coaching here in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I've been in Lincoln for about 30 years. I'm originally from Colorado. That's home for me. And
Nice.
so I've been doing this work coming up on 5 years. So
Okay.
that when we started talking, that's the fun part is so much has evolved and you just learn so much in those first 5 years. So for the first 4 years, I did divorce coaching.
Okay.
Like you said, sometimes this work can be exhausting. I personally have gone through a high conflict custody and divorce case for 15 years.
Wow.
So when you're personally involved and that's what you're doing, they always say if you love what you do, you don't ever work a day in your life, probably
Yes.
unless you're actually doing something that you're actually going through.
Mm.
So at year 4, which was December, I just felt like I didn't want to burn out because I absolutely, like I said, I'm totally energized by what I do, the women I've been able to help and walk alongside, and even some men as well. And so I decided, as many of us know, family court um, is not necessarily broken. It's created the way it is, but it hurts families. And so I thought, well, let's go to the helping people so like recover and be educated on narcissistic abuse and coercive control, instead of basically helping them float through a system that doesn't favor how we would like our families to be in, safe environments with, healthy parents, both mom and dad. And so I went down that journey and it was going good, but I just felt like I had made such a difference in the divorce coaching. And so, as with everything, I just left it with God and I said, you're going to take this business each direction you want. And one day, it was literally just one day, I had seen a project online that just sparked my interest for my passion for the children in family courts.
Okay.
And so this project was like about red sand. Sad to say, I can't remember exactly what the project was about, but people like plant red sand all over, like between rocks and different things. And I thought, what is it that I want it to just make it look like our unique project? And I just came up with the purple tennis shoe for parents and the yellow tennis shoe for children. And it's called The Shoes Left Behind. And so,
Okay.
so many people like yell mom and yell dad. And I wanted it to be all about the children. So
Mm.
that was what I was working on currently. And then the divorce coaching started up again. And I realized at that moment that I was refreshed because I hadn't taken on so many divorce clients, that I was excited again, and completely energized by it again. And so I think just in life, um, we teach healthy boundaries, we teach communication skills to others, but sometimes we forget that we need boundaries on, I can't talk 24/7. I can't take clients on more than above that would interfere with other things. And so I just felt like I learned a lot in that short break. And then the Shoes Left Behind project came out of that.
Wow. This is incredible. Okay, I want to go all the way back to something you kind of led with at the beginning and start from there and kind of come back through. But so at the very beginning of when you were sharing, you had talked about like the system, the legal system, the courtroom. You had said it is not broken. It is designed this way or something along those lines, right? Could you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit more about that? Because honestly, I really suspect folks that for whatever reason just do not have experience in that setting and are not familiar with what happens, they may think to themselves or assume people do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, or it's right like a place where justice happens, or right there's a lot of should be highly educated, well-intentioned, etc. you know like how could it go wrong? What does that mean when you say? So I think I know what you mean, but I'd love for you to like go into more depth about what you really mean when you said that.
Well, having, like I said, personally been in the family court system and seeing things that have gone on, um, just led me to work part-time in corrections,
Okay.
because I wanted to know like the different types of charges that people get when it comes to child abuse, domestic violence, things like that, protection orders, stalking, all of that. And just each little piece that I studied would lead me to something different. And kind of to narrow it down, for example, initially, both parties, when you're looking for temp orders, are to provide their financials to their attorneys. And I thought, okay, so we understand, for example, my ex-husband worked, I was a stay-at-home mom with the children. And so, they would look at the disparity between, obviously an income and no income. But I found out that attorneys look to see the financials because, again, all those attorneys work in places, they golf together, they drink together, they go to, meetings together. And
Mm.
so it's basically to know how much they have to play with. And that
Mm.
was like mind boggling to me because, in addition to that, when you first get into it, a lot of them will say, oh, well, like I had a protection order. And they'll be like, well, you guys are splitting up, you'll eventually figure it out. And so basically, what the court is saying through not only the attorneys, but when you get in front of the judge, is we have acknowledged, we have granted you a protection order. However, we expect and demand for you to co-parent with the person that abuses you. And that's what changed a lot in how they immediately, if they label a case high conflict when it comes to divorce and custody, there is, I'm trying to think, it's got a specific name, but it's all the funding that goes on behind the scenes. And it's like, what is it? The for funding. I'd have to look up the terminology again, but and it just goes through like the court systems, what kind of extra money bonuses for that local jurisdiction get for like high conflict, for them collecting child support, for them putting a high conflict family through like a family coordinator, a psychologist that would work with the whole family. And it led to all these different areas of where they basically, that court system gets the benefits for not one and done, so that the kids can go on and live a semi-normal life, but they need you to continue to come back again and again and again to continue to fund that. And most often you don't for those types of cases, you don't use the same attorney. One may say, oh, this is too much work. So then now you're off to your next attorney. And so each person gets a piece of the pie, I guess.
Okay. Could you explain a little bit about how and what? Because I have a social work education. That's my background. And so I work with a lot of other social workers or therapists and whatnot. And within that field that I work in, I will often hear in trainings that we have, it takes two to tango, or high conflict being used to describe domestic violence. And it will be talked about in a way where it's like, well, what is in the best interest of the child, right? And could you talk a little bit about why maybe that makes sense in some circumstances, but it is not applicable and it does not make sense or apply to intimate partner violence or domestic violence? Does that make sense?
Well, first of all, and again, I think so. So correct me if I'm going down the wrong road. But so first of all, there is men abusers and there's women abusers. A lot of people just want to say, oh, it's just men, it's just men. So if I use the phrase, if the man does this to the women, again, I say that because I'm female and I'm a female coach, but the false statement that is made so often besides high conflict is that just because he was an abusive husband doesn't mean that he's not a good dad. So then of course roles reverse,
right.
If the mother was the abuser. And the biggest, hugest thing in that, if people would stop and say that very slowly. So you're going to tell me that when you see things in family court where a parent keeps taking the other parent back to court again and again, knowing that there's not finances there. I personally was told, if you leave, I will ensure that you are not financially sound until our last child turns 19.
Wow.
And so you hear a lot of those comments, and that's just one of many. Or for example, I got a text message with a woman beat to a pulp, and it said, this is what domestic violence is for future reference, just so you know. And I had already left. So a lot of times when cops are coming out and giving tickets and whatnot, that would be considered a terroristic threat now. But 15 years ago, coercive control, narcissism, domestic violence was there, but just wasn't being recognized. It was kind of like, well, we'll ticket them both, or we'll just ticket, round robin. He gets a ticket this time, round robin, she gets a ticket next time. And a lot of times there is alcohol involved when they come to scenes that I have seen while working in corrections. So I know that, they have to weed that out as well. But so you take all those different scenarios, now repeat that phrase. He may be a bad spouse, but that doesn't mean he's a bad dad. Well, if those kids, like my children, for example, had stayed at home for all those years, and now they see behavior like this in front of them, does that make that person a good father? And that's when, most anybody I know would say, well, no, it doesn't. That is not a good example, because you are adding stress, you're adding financial burdens, sometimes medical burdens, whatever the case may be, to a parent who is a good parent, is involved in everything their children do, and now they have the burden to carry of their abuser. So that, a lot of the times when they say, they bring the term high conflict in, it is because the abuser will say, I want this, this, and this. And the survivor will say, no, let's divide this, or you take that, I take this. And if it's not their way, Now all of a sudden the court goes, oh, high conflict. Why? Because you dared to say no
Oh, right.
to the person who many times could be quite charismatic in court. And
Yeah.
the other one is so frazzled and just probably deer in the headlights, for lack of a better term. So now we've got someone in a suit or someone in a black robe acting as if they've known you this whole time. They've only seen you in court once, probably have never met you on the street. And for the children, typically the judge never meets your children. So
Right.
they're making decisions on I mean, they could see a picture. And you see the ones in Walmart, the picture of the missing kid, and it says, well, this kid was this old when it happened. They should look like this by this time. A judge or an attorney would probably know more about that missing child than they would be the one that they are writing an order for.
Right.
So before you said high conflict, what did you say the other term was that you hear a lot?
Oh, like it takes two to tango, or that it's essentially kind of taught, or I often hear expressed in a way that it's almost as if it's like with any other relationship. Let's, like just take a relationship, let's say, that doesn't have that dynamic of power and control or coercive control. And that's actually something else, before I forget, that I want you to also explain, is what is coercive control, because I genuinely do believe that that concept, even if people hear it or it is being talked about, I'm not sure that it's really like sinking in or truly being understood for exactly what it is, because it's like it feels to me anyway, like it goes in one ear and out the other, if it's even being talked about at all. And that kind of all relationships, including domestic violence ones, are being treated as if, hey, both people are capable of taking a deep breath. Both people are capable of like calming down. And, because we all do as people get kicked out of
Yep.
our, I call it window of tolerance, right? And we can get, including myself, I can end up getting, hyper arousal, right? In that kind of state where maybe I'm yelling and maybe I'm saying things I don't mean, and maybe I'm responding and reacting and showing up in a way that I am not proud of, right? And that I'm going to have to go back and say to that person or that group of people or whatever it may be, like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I caused XYZ damage. That wasn't my best moment. Here's what I'm going to do, whatever, right? To try to make it better in the future, etc. Um, that's when we're talking about that situation, then like, yeah, it does make sense maybe to say things like it takes two to tango or cool off or whatever. But I think if you could go a little bit more into explaining what actually is coercive control and how are those tactics utilized by a perpetrator against their victim, and why is this that dynamic disallows us from applying, like, oh, it takes two to tango, and we can't look at it through that lens, and we actually have to really be careful to think very differently about how we're approaching those situations, whether you're the police or a judge or you're a therapist or you're a social worker or you're a friend or a family member, like whoever you are, right?
Right. Well, I think initially, coercive control was not a huge thing, because initially people started out with parental alienation, which
Mm,
was a debunked theory by a psychologist, Gardner. And so the courts quickly and attorneys quickly picked up on that as, well, let's, as it for the abusers, let's use that as a tactic of, to say that, for example, that the moms are alienating the kids from their dads. And so the male side of the equation, of course, since many, many, many years ago, it typically was that the woman would keep the children for the tender years, which was typically birth to 6 or 7. So before they went to school and stuff. So then all of a sudden parental alienation came out and they're like, yep, use that. Just say she's keeping the kids from me. Not that I'm out bar hopping 4 or 5 nights a week, and dating on the weekends, but she won't let me have the kids. And so that became a huge thing for people to use. And then it kind of evolved, in my perspective, it evolved to high conflict. And so nobody really wants to use parental alienation the way most people take it, but there is behaviors where a parent, typically the abusive parent, does use the behaviors to tell the other parent horrible things. Your mom or your dad doesn't love you. They didn't show up not because they had a meeting. They showed up. They didn't show up because they just didn't want to have you tonight. I mean, just horrible things that end up hurting the children. And so you kind of see now the group shifting away from high conflict either, because again, parental alienation has a good explanation for it versus Richard Gardner's bad description for it. High conflict, we were trying to label that the abuser was creating conflict in the courtroom, but then the abusers came in again and used high conflict to say, she's just so dramatic, or he just doesn't want to settle, or he doesn't want to pay child support. And so everybody just used it negatively again. And I feel like now we have evolved to something that everybody can begin to understand, and that's the coercive control. And that, in the interest of alienating the kids versus high conflict versus control, that individual controls the narrative. So, for example, everything that they do, they deflect on to the safe parent. So if the safe parent takes the child to the doctor and invites that parent, and that parent doesn't come, all of a sudden, well, now, they didn't tell me. Well, you're kind of in control of your own household once you get split up. So once you receive the email or the parenting app, are we supposed to handhold to make sure you make to those appointments? Right. It's not, but they are just kind of the holding the strings throughout every individual. It's things of scaring people with scare tactics. And a lot of the times they will control the narrative for the teachers at school, for the child's sports team, maybe what religion they go to. For example, I worked on a case where they had issues with their phone. So the kids were to have phone time with the non-custodial parent, and the custodial parent always made them available. But the non-custodial parent was the one who paid and controlled the phones. So would just shut their phone off or block the children, and then would go to court a few weeks later and say, I haven't been allowed to talk to my kids. They're an alienating parent. Yeah. And so you hear that just shortly. A judge has never met any of you guys. Maybe this is the second time she's seen the parents. She's still never seen the children. Or another case I worked in, the one parent was all for sports. The other parent was fine with sports, but knew they didn't most likely have the funding for really expensive show to the world sports. Oh, they both had agreed on that. However, what happened is the one parent put the kids in sports and then would have what we call one of their flying monkeys take the kids from that sporting event and then say, oh, sorry, they didn't want to go back to that other parent. And so then they built the narrative, again, behind the scenes, controlling everything, with scare tactics and promises of a new bike or a new AirPod. I mean, whatever age,
Uh-huh.
Apple Watch, I guess you'd say now,
Yeah.
we're in. So that controlling all of that and also controlling the individual. Like I've heard things as crazy as if you don't sleep with me, you're not going to get child support.
Wow.
From, yet another case that I've worked, and it makes no sense to the average person, but somehow they felt like that individual felt like supporting their kid must mean that they must get something out of it too.
Right.
And as we know, the courts don't require that in order to pay what a parent owes on a child.
Right.
So more and more is coming out about coercive control. The two professionals that I always tell people that I really love to hear their perspective is Dr. Romney
Okay.
and Dr. I probably bought the name Cacciola. And
Okay.
both of them you can find on Instagram. And they are both psychologists, very, very well known in their expertise. And
Okay.
for the terminology and definitions that we always seem to find hard to understand, they just make it so simplistic. I love both of them. They're very great at what they do.
Will you send me their links and I can
Yes,
include
yes.
it? Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you're wanting to go check out who Tammy is referring to, we'll have links for you to go and click
Yes. Yeah.
into.
Because I feel like, well, Dr. Caccioli, I went and I took her certification program. And then Dr. Romney was just introduced me way early when a friend of mine said, I think you're dealing with a narcissist. And so, I mean, she's, for being extremely intelligent as she has a way of bringing it back to everyday conversation where people can understand.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about, a lot of times, like if a doctor walks into a room
Yeah.
and they tell you in their thinking way of things, and you're like,
What are you
so
talking
you kind
about?
of like slow that down for me. And they're not that way. They're both amazing at what they do. But yeah, I definitely would love everybody. Because like I said, I may explain something and someone goes, man, I still don't get it. Maybe she explains it and they do get it.
Yeah.
So I think we all work together as a team, what people relate to the best.
Yes. Tammy, you
Um,
mentioned something that made me think of a question I have for you. So, and I'm not sure if this is what your experience was or not, but you touched into something that I'm wondering, because you mentioned that she told you that you were likely dealing with narcissism, or narcissistic abuse. Did
mhm.
you have a point at which, a period at which you were like reflecting back on your situation and thinking to yourself, like, wow, I had no idea? Or did you feel like you always kind of know? And I'm asking because, like, for me and my personal
Oh,
experience, I had no idea at all. It wasn't until like years later and lots of, I don't even know how you know what it was? Somebody gave me a power and control wheel. That's actually what it was. That was the first time that I actually had it start to kind of like sink into my brain a little bit about, oh, wait a minute. Like that happened to me and this happened to me and I can relate to that. And I was seeing it all in this like one sheet of paper that was putting these different puzzle pieces together and creating a picture for me that seemed for the first time to help me understand it in a new way. And then kind of, I guess it's from there that I just kept researching and kept learning. But for you, did you have an experience like that where you went from like having absolutely no idea to somehow, some way it occurring to you what was going on? And what was that like for you? And how did you figure it out?
I mean, I guess always in the back of my mind, based upon some particular situations I won't go into, but um, I knew it was an abusive situation. But as far as like 15 years ago, I don't recall ever hearing the word narcissism.
Mm.
And Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, all of that were either new or wasn't out, because I think before TikTok, it was more of like images and silly videos, so it wasn't really about having real conversations. And somebody that was a friend of mine, one of her friends, had seen a post, and I don't know if I tagged her or she shared it with her, and she messaged me and she said, "I'm pretty sure that you're dealing with a narcissist." And I still was kind of like, how nice. They don't know my situation. um, I looked at the word, and I don't remember in what context I looked up narcissism, but it was one of these just really, probably like you said, a doctor's like professional, your tibula, whatever type of thing, instead of saying you broke your arm, like right above the wrist. That gives you clarity. But then I saw, because stuff pops up on Facebook as you search it, and I saw like a quiz, and it was 10 out of 10, I believe, on narcissism, and 18 out of 20 on what was the other one? There's basically something that goes along with it. I want to say sociopath.
Oh,
There's two
interesting.
different ones, but one of
Okay.
those, I taken two quizzes. One was 10 out of 10, and the other one was like 18 out of 20. And I was like, what is
Wow.
this? What is
Right.
this? Like, because everybody tells you, you'll go through that phase, and even the courts call it off a cooling off period for
Yeah.
like the first year or two. And then
Yep.
they say, then if you guys can't agree and you've already gone to mediation, then come back to the court.
Yeah.
But they want you to see what you can do in between. And it had already been so controversial, down to if they were supposed to wear pink socks, he was going to put them in blue socks, or they were supposed to wear jeans that day, he probably put them in tank top and shorts. It was
Sure.
just, I wasn't catching all of this, because I thought, I'm just parenting. I'm not bothering him. He's living a totally new life. And, I'm still focusing on the children. And so as soon as I read that, I just started getting stuff out and reading everything I could. And then I was referred to the certification program that I went through to get my high conflict divorce certification, and a little bit more there. But I was so in the thick of things that I went later on and got several additional certifications to say, okay, I want to make sure I know narcissism. I want to make sure I know trauma. I want to make sure I understand coercive control. And then that mixed in with 15 years of lived experience, just spent hours upon hours upon hours whenever I wasn't working, or if I didn't have the children, just looking up, trying to understand what this nightmare was, and finally realizing that it's not a nightmare that probably ever ends.
Mm.
And so that's kind of where we're at today. But I just feel like, just like social workers and just like therapists, sometimes a doctor, sometimes a school teacher, they find somebody that they respected, or that was there for them, and so they want to go into the same work. And I thought, wow, my family lived in a different state. I was here in Nebraska all by myself.
Wow.
And like you said, I remember someone making a comment, and they said, "You're so lucky." And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, every other weekend, you don't have to have your kids." And
Oh.
it was just crushing because I thought, did you really mean that? Like, if you didn't want your kids, every weekend, why did you have a child? I'm like,
Right.
I want my kids every weekend. And so I began to understand slowly. It's still never less painful, but when people are just like, make little comments like that, not understanding, or they're like, oh my goodness, my kids are driving me crazy. I could just scream or I could just pull my hair out. And I'm thinking, and I'm just wishing for more time with my kids.
Mm.
So it's not only do people not understand coercive control or high conflict, most people are like, you'll get through it. And, eventually you guys will laugh at it. Some people even go on vacation together. That's never going to happen in a high conflict situation. And so not only is everything that you've dreamed about and hoped for your family gone, just, just gone, never coming back, but they don't have to decide who gets this year's birthday or who gets next year's Halloween or who gets next year's 4th of July. It's not, you're not given. It's give and take. You have to share those holidays, even years, odd years. And so you get to the new norm of things like whatever day we celebrate is whatever the holiday is. So if we got to
Mm.
celebrate 2 days early a birthday, then that's when the birthday was, or 2 days after, whatever the case was. We just made the most of whatever moment we had.
Yeah. Of all the like time that you've spent reflecting on this and all of the research you've done and the lived experience you've had, etc., what do you feel like would be something you wish other people just could understand or would talk about more, or any message you have that's like this is important. People need to get this or hear this.
Um, in narrowing it down to what they should get, it is so difficult because a narcissist knows how to play their audience.
Mm.
I've seen things like them cry. I've seen them like embrace a child that they haven't hugged probably in years. So
Mm.
to ask somebody to get something that they're like, wow, are you just that sensitive? Or if you've got, for example, new, what we call the new supply in the picture, and the new girlfriend is expecting these children to call them mom, or the new boyfriend is expecting them to call them dad. I guess with the clients that I work with, what they would like them to see is there's two parents, there's mom and there's dad. Those titles should be respected. And just because what you see on Facebook or Instagram, as we know, many people post what they want people to think their life is like, but that's not necessarily what it is behind closed doors. And I guess many years later, I've still had people approach me and say, I'm really sorry. I had no idea what you were going through at the time. And these were neighbors that I had that,
Okay.
again, they didn't see things behind closed doors. Um, and when I left, basically the harassment and abuse moved to the community, the neighbors.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of police calls, and um, I know some people moved out of the community.
Wow.
Um, and that's, there's a lot of stuff after the fact. But I think what the secondary thing that I would love people to know is a survivor doesn't really need to know everything that goes on in that chaotic world anymore. And I
Mm.
think people just like drama. And so a lot of people pointed out things that I'm just like, not my circus, not my monkey.
Yeah.
And so they just, again, people just love to talk. And so they just, carry things on. And so I think it's just more, the biggest thing is just because it appears to be perfect in public does not mean that it is.
Yeah.
I think you can tell sometimes, I guess, people that could really tell was by maybe the expression or exhaustion on my face. One day I had a lady walk me out to my car because my ex had just keyed my car. But not everybody has that intuition. So to really say, is there one thing I'd love people to know? Um, you've got kind of two sides of the coin. You have like the narcissistic tendencies to a narcissist, and then you have those empaths that would notice anything anywhere.
Mm.
And so it's I don't know if there'd be one specific thing. And I always used to think that was like a key question that came up all the time. And I don't know if there is just one specific thing.
Yeah. I It's so like cringy now for me to think about this and to like say it out loud and admit it. But I'm going to be turning 40 soon. And for me, in my situation, this really like hit me when I was in my very early like 20s, 21, 22 age. So almost almost 20 years ago for me, but I really did genuinely think at that time I could end domestic violence. Like, how silly does that sound coming out saying it? Like, but it's true. I actually thought that. And I really did believe, oh, it's just like I need to go to school. I need to get certain letters behind my name. I need to learn certain language. I just need to figure out what to say to who. Um, because it seemed so obvious to me that there had to be somebody to go to with this that could do something about it. And I don't know, it just that was what was coming up for me when you said like it's not one thing. It's like, yeah, this is an issue that is so big and spans across the world and across time. And yeah, it isn't, you're right. It's not just like one message or one thing that we need to understand, but I'm so grateful for you to come on here and to share a little bit about your experience and your understanding and your wisdom around it. Um, you had mentioned, what did you call it? The shoes that project. Will you share a little bit more
Yeah.
about that and how you landed there?
Um, so I, like yourself, am going to be hitting the big 50 here shortly. And so, I mean, again, I think a lot of your knowledge and expectations maybe sadly comes down because of all the things you've lived and seen. At 20, I would have probably thought the same thing.
Okay.
Mine happened mid 20s to mid 30s, and so I was still thinking, oh, I could educate. But I tell you, even locally in legislation and the senators I've talked to and the governor, I mean, we still have a long ways to go. And I don't want
Yeah.
anybody to be discouraged. It just means don't stop. Keep doing what you're doing because it is starting to make a difference, that nothing unfortunately changes overnight. And so with the shoes left behind, it really started around, and I can't really share the details, but our case spanned family court and juvenile court. And unfortunately, because family court failed, and yes, people say failure is like a huge word, but they failed to review all the information that showed the true picture of everything that was going on. Our family ended up in juvenile court that basically got it just almost instantly. And so for me, it left me um, now being basically controlled by two courts because even though family court will never admit that they got it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
they still had the origination of the case. They refused to let go of that because
Yeah.
they had made all the wrong decisions, and it only took a couple months for juvenile to make the right decisions.
Right.
But you get to a certain point and kids are at a certain age, and you're past the point of really making a profound difference, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so those things just kept going over in my head, just seeing it from the correction side of point, seeing it from the cases that I was dealing with, the people that I would go, the college students that I would go talk to, and students that were already familiar with domestic violence. And, this is maybe even prior to them having children. And so my focus kept being on either they had experienced it as children and then were already in an abusive relationship in college. So I kept talking about how can we break the cycle that is known as family court. And so I again just started looking at statistics, and the one that stuck out at me, 30, because I've worked with internationally with Sweden, with Canada, different places,
Oh,
Italy that you
wow.
talked about as well, and 38.1 million cases in family court a year just in the United States. That's
No,
just in the
hold
United
on.
States.
Say that one more time because I don't think what?
38.1 million family law cases every year just in the United States. And when we're talking about, there's different variations of the case, and I know I don't intersect with like CPS and like that. So
Okay.
my focus is on kids that are going through abusive parents getting divorced and fighting over the kids and hurting the kids, or the abuser gets custody and continues to abuse the kids.
Mm.
So because unfortunately that's just in family court, there may be no health and human services involved, no nothing. It's just this high conflict that keeps the courts making money. I mean, they're $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
If you've ever watched the YouTube, and this is one I will give you a link to because I think everybody that has ever had or will ever work with a family and family court needs to watch Divorce Corp, the documentary that was made 14 years ago, which is kind of chilling for me because that's when my order was finalized. But it was basically a whole bunch of professionals that are speaking up, saying what's really happening in family
Wow.
court. So, like I said, and like with anything that I'm passionate about, we have a TikTok account and we have a Facebook account, and we have our first online store that has die cuts that you can put like on the Stanley Cups.
Okay.
And it's
Yeah.
the purple shoe and the yellow shoe. But it's basically what I'm looking for it to be is a conversation starter.
Okay.
Like, so, how did you pick that sticker for your Stanley Cup? Well, let me tell you. For example, I'm a grandparent, that doesn't get to see my grandparents because, my son married this girl, and, I think there's some issues there, but all I know is because she hates him, I don't get to give them birthday gifts, or I don't get to bake them cookies, or whatever the case may be. So it's what people are not realizing. It's not just a family of a mom and a dad and maybe 2 boys and 3 girls, whatever the family dynamic is.
Sure.
It affects aunts and uncles. I have relatives that my kids to this day, and I have one already out of the system, but that have never met relatives, all because trips were messed with, switch times, not saying I'm not going to return children or whatever. And I just hear that all the time with the cases that I work with. How am I going to know that if I send them, you'll get them back? Things like
Yeah.
that. And so I'm looking at it as how has family court hurt society as a whole. So we're not going for moms, we're not going for dads, which I think has made us stand out extensively. And we're not here for a lawsuit, like like with
Yeah.
social media, they say if your kid has been affected by it, it's not a lawsuit, it's not a change.org petition, anything like
Yeah.
that. It's everybody that possibly makes any decision about a child and family court. Are you really knowing that these kids, do you not think that in 5 years, 10 years, 19 years in some states, 18 in most, are not going to come back and wonder why? Why did you ruin my relationship with my dad? Why did you ruin my relationship with my mom? Because you didn't listen when I told my therapist, or you didn't listen when I told my teacher. I had one, and it will stick out in my mind forever. A little child who told their teacher, the worst day of my life was when my father hit me in the face with the shoe. And it was, I guess it was a teacher that was well known. Every first grade class, she would create a binder for them. And every week she would ask them a question, and the child could answer what was their best day, what was their worst day, what do you want to do when you grow up, whatever the case may be. And
Yeah.
the child gets the binder at the end of the year. And that's what that child wrote. But Health and Human Services, no,
Right.
we're not going to do anything about it. So there's just so many people. I feel like the person who gets it the best, I don't know if you've ever heard of Barry Goldstein, but he does extensive work with the ACE study, which is adverse childhood experiences.
Sure.
And it
Okay.
gives children a score, like whether or not they've like been in a car accident, or they've seen a relative pass away, or the trauma from family court, or whatever the case may be. And so I'm super excited. I'm still working on my first book. I have a couple in the works right now,
Oh my gosh,
but
congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And he wrote the forward for it. And I think he describes, everybody will be able to understand why the shoes left behind exists when they read it, his forward.
Nice. Oh,
So
that's so beautiful. Okay, yeah, you're definitely gonna have to keep me updated as any books that you have out already or coming out with so that I can keep people updated on that and get links to it. And I can't wait to read it. Uh,
was there anything else that you feel like you get asked a lot that just doesn't seem to have an answer, I guess?
I honestly, if you would be willing to come back actually another time in the future and do another show with me, I feel like
Oh, absolutely.
I could come back with some like a list. Not very, I don't like think quick on my feet, but I know that there is
Oh, you did.
so many things that I'm just like blown away by, that I hear, that I get frustrated by, or that really ultimately like burned me out from being able to be so connected to the mission. And I really had to step back because I was just so honestly just angry all of the time about like, why do you not see it? Why can I not explain it to you in a way that you just are able to understand it? Why is nothing changing, et cetera, et cetera? Um, but my new favorite quote is, well, one of my new favorite quotes. I have a lot of quotes I enjoy, but one of them is, do not be afraid of hard work that never ends. And I think you mentioned something a little bit earlier about
Mm,
how you got to a point where you realized like, I don't think this is ever actually gonna stop. Um, and I no longer I don't think I'm coming at it anymore from that perspective of like, I need to make it end, or this has to come to an end. It's more for me now of like, okay, I don't it's not meant for me to do alone. I can collaborate and do it with in
right.
community. And like you said, don't give up. Like whatever whatever light we are bringing to the table matters. Like it mattered to that one person that one day and that one for that one reason, whatever that was in that small way. And it all
Right.
adds up and it all matters. So yeah, I think I'm just like, that's what I want to end on today is I'm really trying to come into this work again, putting self-care first and foremost for myself so that I can sustain in it and that I don't burn out again, and that I can keep being there to serve this mission. And that would be what I want to end on asking you is if you could speak a little bit to self-care for yourself, burnout for yourself, either how you've experienced it in your own work that you've done and or how you've seen it in others or in systems, whatever that means to you or however you want to respond to that.
Well, I think it like comes over time. And I remember the first time I realized that, and it was working with new clients and still trying to keep track of all my stuff as well, which I really wouldn't recommend to anybody. But I realized, I said, I am just exhausted. And I look at this stuff over and say, did I miss something? Did I not include that? Did I include this? You know, you get to that point. And so I prayed that Christmas, and this has been several years ago. And I said, please remove from my life whatever is harming me from moving forward.
Wow.
Because I knew that I had work to do. And I knew that it's so easy to look back and say, well, if I had seen that maybe, or if I had known this, or whatever the case may be. And I remember distinctly my computer crashed. Had everything on that computer, including my email was tied to it. So like I couldn't even get into that email anymore.
Oh, the devastation.
And when I tell you there was some stuff in there, but I didn't feel devastated. At first, I went to Best Buy and they're like, it's going to be like $1,000 and we don't think we'll get anything back. And I'm thinking, well, why in the world would I pay you $1,000 then? But there was just a piece that it was gone.
Wow.
And I just can't explain it. And so I guess, again, working really hard at this work, I started to get to that point again. And I thought, oh, be careful what you ask for. I'm like, because, you know, I don't need the next electronic that I have to, you know, just crash just for me to slow down. And so that's when I made the decision to stop the divorce coaching at the end of last year. Okay. And I was the only person that they knew from Nebraska. So it was a very hard decision to make. It was a very hard decision to make, but I felt peace when I did it. But I truly feel that it was just take a break. It's not now. It's not a yes or a no. It's not now, because now I'm just as excited as I was with that first client that I had.
Yeah.
And that's because I decided to put the mask on me. And then I was in corrections, as I told you, as a part-time basis. I got my hand stuck in a door. And so with those doors, there's no sensors. So it fractured the top of my finger. It ripped off my fingernail and it completely just destroyed the nail bed.
Oh my God.
And you don't realize like how much your fingers depend on each other until you're not able to move them. And it just, once again, that was the day after Mother's Day. And I'm still in hand therapy as we speak.
Oh, wow.
But all of a sudden I realized there's not people around. I'm a people person. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is, you know, and I'm having this conversation with God and I'm like, this is the worst possible place you could have put me, at home. And he's like, no, because you can hear me better when you're home.
Oh, wow.
And I just felt like I re-met myself,
Ah,
like in this new stage in life, and enough to embrace that, like I said, I'll be in 50 here shortly in a few weeks. And I'm like, and I just have that excitement. Like, what do I want to do with these next years? Like, what are my goals? It's time to dream. My kids are almost out of school. It's time to start dreaming. What does that look like? And guess what? I can.
ha.
And so, you'll just get those phrases that you just have to. Self care is so important. And I just reiterate it so strongly with my clients, but I end it by saying, I hope you don't think I'm being hard on you. I had no one necessarily that I trusted at the time to say, you need to slow down. You're going to burn out.
Mm.
Because I just felt like, if you were a mom, you would understand moms just keep going. We can be burned out, this or that. We just keep going. And it was no, if for nothing else, that saying that if you don't put the oxygen on you, you're no good to your kids.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I need to start like practicing what is such a huge part of my curriculum in coaching is self-care. I mean, it's huge. In fact, right now, I just completed the first draft of the workbook that I will be using with all of my clients in regards to self-care.
Wow. Okay.
And so this season, I would have never probably contemplated or even gotten close to completing a first draft in those first 4 years. But now that many times I see myself in the clients that I have, because when they're anxious about something, I'm like, I remember that. I remember how that felt. And so I just, life's about seasons and you go with the changes. And it doesn't matter what line of work you are, but our line of work, for sure, you need self-care.
Yes. That is so beautiful. Oh, Tammy, thank you again so much for your time and coming on here and having this conversation with me. I would definitely love to invite you back again in the future. I want to read your book and I want to come up with a list of other things that like specifically I'm asked about or thinking about that I feel like you could speak to a little bit more when we have more time again in the future if you'd be willing to come back. Um
That
but
would be great.
but in the meantime, in the spirit of self-care, I hope today, after this, whatever you do, you ask yourself, what would somebody that loves themselves do? And give that to yourself today.
Sounds good. You as well.
I will follow up with you.
I always tell people,
Oh no, go ahead.
oh, I thought it paused on us. I think we're good.
I was just gonna say I will definitely follow up with you again in the near future and want to check in on you. And you said that you're gonna send me a link, right, to your book and all of the things.
Yes.
Yes, and I'll have that included for anybody listening as well, so they can keep up with you too.
Sounds wonderful. If they want to be in contact with me at this point in time, I do have a website. It's Adcock Coaching LLC.com, or they can call me because I do initial discovery calls for free just to make sure that the coaching is a fit. And
Oh,
that's
nice.
531 310 1061. For some reason, if they don't catch me because I'm in session, they can leave me a voicemail and I will call them back. And then from the website, it also gives you just the links to click on to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.
Beautiful. You heard it from Tammy, everybody. There's lots of ways to get in contact with her. And where are you from again? Your local area?
Lincoln, Nebraska.
Lincoln, Nebraska. So if you are local there, or I suppose even if you're not local, right? I mean,
Correct.
you could
I've
still
worked with
check out
clients all
Tammy.
over. Yep.
That's beautiful. Okay. Well, it's an honor and a blessing. And Tammy, I'm not going to say this is goodbye because it's going to be just see you later.
See you later.
All right, we're gonna stop recording, but have a good night. And I want to catch up with you after this recording, so don't go away yet.
Okay.
I love you. I love you.